Now we're going to do, it's really, this is part 4? Goodness. Part 4 of, part, part 4 of Basho Introduction. We'll just go right on. Don't hesitate, okay? We're continuing part introduction. Note, in the above absolute freedom of movement, which was typical of Soen and his school, in the first poem, Basho identifies him with a black bull and admires the plum tree, which is the source of his poetic inspiration, namely Soen. In the second poem, one of Basho's disciples praises him for writing a beautiful song. What Basho learned from Soen is the special value in poetry of the humble and unpretentious imagery of everyday life, as he himself testifies by saying, if you describe a green willow in the spring rain, it will be excellent as linked verse of a higher order. Link verse of a lower order, however, must use more homely images such as a crow picking mud snails in a rice paddy. Basho is reported to have said, but for sowing, we would be still licking the slaver of aged Chitoku. So he likes sewing and tokuku. In the summer of 1676, Basho returned to his native place for a short visit with the following poem. My souvenir from Edo is the refreshing cold wind of Mount Fuji I brought home on my fan. Returning to Edo, almost immediately, he actively engaged in reading poetry. During the following 4 years, his poems were published in different anthologies, consisting mainly of his and his disciples' poems, began to be published, among which Ito, Sangen, Toshi, Matabo, and Ito and Chaka may be mentioned. On the whole, however, Basho's poems on this of this period reflect the playful tone and ingenious style of Soen. To quote some of them, poem. A male cat passed through the hole in the broken hearth to meet his mistress. So it was all right. Yesterday has passed safely, though I ate and drank quantities of globefish soup. Oh, it is spring, great spring it is now, great, great spring, ah, great. Basho, however, was not satisfied to remain in this kind of low-toned atmosphere of the floating world for long. There was something in him which gradually rebelled against it. In 1680, Sampu, one of the admirers of Basho, built for him a small house in Fukakawa, not far from the river Sumita, in a relatively isolated spot. In the winter of the same year, a stalk of basho tree, a certain species of banana tree, was presented to him by one of his disciples. He must have got his name from that, a tree, a basho tree. Basho seems to have felt a special attachment to this tree from the very beginning. He says, poem, I planted in my garden a stalk of basho tree and hated at once the shooting bush clovers. again, about the same tree, he wrote in later years, the leaves of the basho tree are large enough to cover a harp. When they are wind broken, they remind me of the injured tail of a phoenix. When they are torn, they remind me of a green fan ripped by the wind. The tree does bear flowers, but unlike other flowers, there is nothing gay about them. The big trunk of the tree is untouched by the axe, for it is utterly useless as building wood. I love the tree, however, for its very uselessness. I sit underneath it and enjoy the wind and rain that blow against me. This must have been an epoch-making event for Basho, for it is from this tree that he took a name for his house, and eventually a new pen name for himself. Basho's life at his riverside house must have been an eternally peaceful, but externally peaceful, but internally agonizing one, for as he sat there meditating all by himself, he began to revolt more and more from the world which surrounded him. Signs of tremendous spiritual suffering was seen in the poems collected in Anzuma Niki, Hake Jin Masakaburi, which were published shortly after his removal to the Riverside House. To quote some of them: poem, a black crow has settled himself on the leafless tree, fall of an autumn day. At midnight, under the bright moon, a secret worm digs into a chestnut. On a snowy morning, I sat by myself, chewing tough strips of dried salmon. Tonight, the wind blowing through the basho tree, I hear the leaking rain drop against a basin. Oars hit waves, and my intestines freeze as I sit weeping in the dark night. It is also during those years of suffering that Basho came to know the priest Bucho, and practiced Zen meditation under his guidance. Whether Basho was able to attain this state of complete enlightenment is a matter open to question. For he repeatedly tells us that he has one foot in the other world and the other foot in this one. There is little doubt, however, that his opportunity gave him the power to see this world in a context in which he had never seen it before. In 1682, when Basho's house was only 2 years old, it was destroyed by fire that swept through a large part of Edo. So Basho sought a temporary abode in the house of Rokuso Kohei at the village of Hatsukari in the province of Kei, now part of the Yamanashi Prefecture. This misfortune must have shaken him considerably, for something almost like despair is heard in the poems collected in Empty Chestnut, which was published immediately after his return to Edo in the summer of 1683. To quote from it, poem. Tired of cherry, tired of this whole world, I sit facing muddy sake and black rice. Who could it possibly be that mourns the passing autumn? careless of the wind rustling his beard. With frozen water that tastes painfully bitter, a sewer rat relieves in vain his parched throat. But despair is hardly the word to express the state of Basho's mind through these years. For those were the years of the deepest meditation and severest self-scrutiny which developed his awareness of an eternal truth, of an important truth. It is best expressed by his own words. What is important to keep our mind high in the world of true understanding, and returning to the world of our daily experiences to seek therein the truth of beauty. No matter what we may be doing at a given moment, we must not forget that it has a bearing upon our everlasting self, which is poetry. This is easy to say but difficult to practice. The poems Basho wrote during the period of 1680 to 83 are not entirely free from the overtones of the ingenious style of Soyan, but they point to the direction in which Basho was moving, all by himself, finding his way step by step through his own suffering, with no one to guide him. In the summer of 1683, Basho's mother died in his native place, and in the winter of the same year, a new house was built for him in Fukuoka by his friends and disciples. On this occasion, Basho wrote as follows. Poem. Overhearing the hail, my old self sits again in the new house like an overgrown oak. Do we have hail today? I don't know if it's hailing. No, we have snow. Basho, however, did not stay in his house for long. For in the summer of 1684, he started on the first of his major journeys. A vivid account of this journey is given in the record of a weather-exposed skeleton, the first of the travel sketches translated in this book, and his route is indicated in Map 1. What must be borne in mind in reading the travel sketches by Basho is that travels in his day had to be made under very precarious conditions, and that few people, if any, thought of taking to the road merely for pleasure or pastime. Furthermore, as I have already indicated, Basho had been going through agonizing stages of self-scrutiny in the years immediately preceding the travel, so that it was quite certain that when he left his house he felt there was no other alternative before him. To put it more precisely, Basho had been casting away his earthly attachments one by one in the years preceding the journey. Now he had nothing else to cast away but his own self, which was in him as well as around him. He had to cast his self away, for otherwise he was not able to restore his true identity. What he calls the everlasting self, which is poetry, in the passage above, he saw a tenuous chance of achieving his final goal in traveling. He left his house, caring not for his provisions, in the state of sheer ecstasy. Page 30. We have to stop again.